And this session one out of at least 4 sessions that we are planning within this work package is focusing on strategy and leadership. And this is really to try to focus on aligning on the transformative potential of artificial intelligence, both within your organizations and your overarching corporate strategies. And this to try to enhance patient care and streamline hospital operations. Today, we will also try to explore how to strategically integrate AI initiatives into your institution's missions and also long-term objectives, and hopefully ensuring measurable impact and sustainability. But with that, I'd like to introduce our speakers. And first, we have Mohammad Mamdani, who's Vice President of Data Science and Advanced Analytics at Unity Health Toronto. So if we can just make sure that we see you also on the screen. You can say hi.
Hi, everyone.
Great, we can hear you now. And while you bring up your presentation, Mohammad, I would also like to, or I'm going to stop sharing, of course, before you can do that. But I just want to also let you know we have with us Magnus Kjellberg, who is Director of AI Competence Center at Sahlgrenska University Hospital here in Gothenburg. And with that, I will stop sharing and I will let you start sharing, Mohammad. And I can also encourage everyone, if you want to have your cameras on, you're more than welcome to. It's always more fun for the speakers to have someone to talk to.
Great. Everyone can see my screen?
Yes, it looks great from here.
Fantastic. All right. Should I dive in?
Yes, please.
Excellent. All right. Thanks for inviting me to speak. I thought what I'd do is I'd touch on value-based AI in healthcare. So I'm sure everyone has heard lots and lots about AI and is wondering, all right, well, why would I use it? What value can it bring to me? When we talk about value in healthcare, you have to step back and at first ask the question, what does value mean? And I think it's an important question. I know it's a bit philosophical and such, but I'm going somewhere with this. So if we take a look at what the literature says on value, there's lots and lots and lots of pieces written on what value in healthcare is from people's perspectives. But if we take a look at how do we get crunchy? How do we actually define value? There's very few groups that have actually defined what value is in a meaningful way where you can walk away and say, okay, I understand it. There is a group called ICER, the Institute for Clinical and Economic Review in the United States, using an incremental cost effectiveness ratio as their kind of key driver for what value means. And what does that mean? The ICER is really focused on life. And what that means is, number one, are you alive or dead? It's probably valuable if you're alive. How long are you alive for? So quantity of life, and also how good is the quality of your life? And it's that simple. Quantity and quality of life. That's really what this framework is based around. Now, some people will argue, well, it's not just about quantity and quality of life. It's a whole bunch of other things like your social networks and all that sort of stuff. And then you get into debates around, well, is it really that as an organization that we want to assume as our definition of value? And in fact, the European Commission actually had a whole session on, well, how do we define value in healthcare? And they actually surveyed a lot of people. They had an expert group come together. And what they concluded is there is not a single accepted definition of value in healthcare. So basically then begs the question, well, then what are we really aiming to do? And I would suggest as organizations, you step back and say, what do we value as an organization? Because clearly there's nothing that everyone agrees upon. How we've defined it at our place. I come from Unity Health Toronto, which is a composition of 3 centers. St. Michael's Hospital, which is an acute care facility, level 1 trauma center in downtown Toronto, academic teaching hospital. On the west end, we have St. Joseph's Healthcare, which is a community hospital. And on the east end, we have Providence Healthcare, which is a long-term care rehab facility. We have over 11,000 staff. In terms of volumes, we have over 1.6 million ambulatory visits each year, over 350,000 inpatient visits each year, and over 170,000 emergency department visits each year. If you multiply that by about 15 years of historical data, that is a decent amount of data to work with. What makes us unique is that we're the only healthcare organization in Canada that has declared AI as a core strategic pillar. That's a really important point because organizations have to make this a priority. If organizations don't, then it just becomes a side project. So from the board of directors to the CEO throughout the entire organization, AI is a core strategic pillar, which means I have a team of about 30 people, and our whole job is to develop and deploy AI solutions. We've deployed over 50 AI solutions into clinical practice by essentially creating a living lab. Because we have buy-in from the board of directors and the CEO, the entire health network is our lab for AI. So what are the sorts of things that we do? First and foremost, we engage clinicians in all of our projects. They actually lead many of our projects, and we pair them with their data science team to co-create solutions that address real problems. So we have to identify real problems first, and then we co-create solutions with them. For example, we have an AI-driven nurse staffing optimization tool where our nurses came to us and said, our teams of nurses, we just kind of guess at how big they have to be. But we have data on when they call in sick, when they go on parental leave, when they take short-term, long-term disability, how often we use agency and overtime. We have all of that data. We just don't use it to understand how big our teams have to be. So we developed an AI model that looked at all sorts of historical patterns, predicted what we should see in the next 2 years, and then right-sized a few of our staffing teams. And this is not the entire nursing team. It's just a few teams that we focused on. And with those few teams, we're able to demonstrate an over $1 million annual cost reduction just by optimizing our nurse staffing sizes. Our physicians came to us and said, can we actually have a computer listen to my conversation with my patient and just take my note? And with the click of a button, I wanted to generate my medical note for me. So the first AI scribe in Canada was actually developed at our place. And there have been studies on it. Now there are many companies that do this. This was in 2016 when nobody had even heard of this concept. So we developed it. All of our family doctors are in SHOs are using this and have been using it for a little while now. The Ontario government did a study and was able to show that over 75% of participants reported reduced cognitive load. They could actually focus on the patient because they didn't have to keep being interrupted and say, wait a minute, I'm going to type stuff into my EMR. They could focus on the patient and they could click a button and it would write their medical note for them. Of course, they have to review it, but it would save them quite a bit of time. How much time? The study shows 3 to 4 hours per week. Our own family medicine team says more, but it gives them a little bit more time back. And over 80% expressed a desire to continue using the AI scribes long term. This is actually another example that's based on an actual patient that came to our hospital 2 years ago. This patient had a really bad headache at home. She was complaining it's nothing she's ever experienced before. She went to 2 different community hospitals. One did a head CT and told her to go home. It was just a bad headache. Her symptoms got worse. She was rushed to our hospital, and she was then rushed into the operating room. She had 3 infarcts in her brain, so basically 3 dead spots. She survived the operative procedure, but she was left in a persistent vegetative state. You can imagine everyone was devastated. Things like this shouldn't happen. If we look at the literature, about 10 to 20% of brain bleeds or intracerebral hemorrhages are missed. 10 to 20% are missed by hospitals. If you come to our hospital at St. Michael's Hospital downtown, in the emergency department, in the clinician area, you're going to see this thing that looks like you're at an airport. All of our patient names are scrolled up, where they're located, the emergency medicine physician is looking after them, the medical imaging tests they ordered, the radiologist is looking after them. And under status, you'll see this blue symbol every now and then that says ICH. That's our AI. Every single head CT that's done in our emergency department is looked at by our AI system, and in just over 1 minute, it will detect the bleed. It belongs to a parent algorithm called traumatic brain injury, which tells you the patient needs to be in the OR right now, or they can wait a few hours, or they don't need an operative procedure. We've compared this with 5 board-certified neurosurgeons, and our algorithm slightly outperforms them. It misses fewer cases. This should be at every hospital in the country. The last example I'll give is our internists came to us and said, we really like to help people not die, which is a great goal for a hospital. How can we do that? Well, could you develop an AI solution that tells us ahead of time when somebody's going to die or go to the ICU? So we developed it. This is a system called ChartWatch. The way it works is it works every hour on the hour. It's running in the background. It's been trained on over 20,000 patients worth of data. Every hour it's running, and it considers between 150 to 170 different parameters every hour, from demographics to labs to vitals and so forth. And it predicts if somebody's going to die or go to the ICU in the next 48 hours. As soon as it reaches a high-risk threshold, it's automated to page the medical team. In our protocols, the medical team has to come and see the patient within 1 hour of being paged. It's been running for over 4 years now, and we published our paper in the Canadian Medical Association Journal in September of 2024, showing a 26% reduction in unexpected mortality. There are other early warning systems out there. News 2, at the Epic system actually has a sepsis prediction tool. They don't work because they're not very accurate, and they just frustrate clinicians. So we had to build something that was much more accurate. So where's the future headed? I believe the future is headed in 2 particular spots: multimodal AI. If you think about how AI currently works, it's based on limited data. We need to give it more data, more types of data, and I'm more than happy to expand on this in the Q&A. And agentic AI, where you basically empower AI to make decisions. We're not doing that a lot right now. A lot of the solutions are human in the loop, which is great. But there are some cases where I think AI could actually make decisions for us and just make our lives much more easy. The other thing we're doing is we're heading to the commercialization space. Why? Because we actually failed miserably at deploying our solution at other hospitals. A hospital is not positioned to run as a business. We can't be somebody's help desk, their IT support, take on liability. For many, many hospitals, as a public organization, we just are not positioned to do it. So that's why we've started to partner with private sector. And they actually take some of our solutions and actually then start spreading it to the rest of the world. And I think there's a lot of potential there. Mutuo is the AI scribe company. They started up many years ago and they just got acquired. Signal One is actually the bigger startup that we have, where the hospital has equity, and has actually driven some really nice collaborations. Really important to develop an AI strategy. And you have to figure out where you are on the adoption curve. What I mean by that is, if you're an innovator, you will inevitably fail in some of your solutions. But somebody has to step up and say, I'm going to pay for that failure. It's okay. Because I'm the first in the world, it doesn't mean I'm going to get it right all the time. Many hospitals will not want the risk or the budgets that go with being an innovator. And that's okay. You can be an early adopter. So you can get somebody else to develop it, see if it works or not. And then if it works, you can take it on. Or at the other end of the spectrum, you can be a laggard. The laggard will say, let everyone else fail, and I'm only going to pick the winners. I'll be last to the game, but that's okay. I'm going to pick the ones that win, so I minimize my resources, maximize my return on investment, because I know these solutions work. So depending on the resources and the vision you have, you could be anywhere on this adoption curve, and there's no right answer. Unity Health decided to become both an innovator and an early adopter. That means we have to pay quite a bit to be that leader and to fail and to take the cost of those failures. And of course, an early adopter as well, because if there's lots of great solutions, we'd like to try them. What do we need to integrate AI into healthcare? We need data. We need infrastructure. We need data governance and processes. We need human resources who are incredibly skilled. We need a real live environment to be able to develop and deploy our solutions into a hospital. And of course, the most important thing we need are vision and courage. Those are the most important things, to be able to say we're going to embrace something that's very new. And I would actually then challenge this group as a last slide to say, first and foremost, where I would start on your journey is say, what do you value? How will you judge the value of these solutions that inevitably are changing practice worldwide? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Mohammed. And we will actually save all the questions till after a second presentation. So take a little note if you have any questions already, and we'll open up the floor after Magnus's presentation. And with that little segue, Magnus, do you want to share your presentation slides, please?
Yes, just a second. Let's see.
And in the meantime, I also wanted to mention that to get a bit of an overview who's in the room, because there's so many of us, if you'd like to make sure that your names and also including perhaps your organization, you can do that just by going to the participants tab, and you can hover over your own name and actually change name. and you can add your organization or correct your name if you want to. But Magnus, thank you very much. That looks great, and we can also hear you. So I will let you go ahead.
Perfect. Sounds like we're all set then. So thank you much for inviting me. I will be talking about how we at Sahlgrenska University Hospital and Region Västra Götaland, which is where Sahlgrenska University Hospital is located, how we have dealt with AI in terms of leadership and strategy, and how our sort of forward-looking ideas looks like. So a little bit of background. So I mean, we're part of Region Västra Götaland, which is a region in western part of Sweden. So this is how it looks like. A fairly big region, population of 1.8 million. So in terms of data access, that is a good thing. So we are like 21 hospitals. We do have primary care, and we also have public dental care. So access of that type of data as one healthcare provider. And we're also quite a big employer. So we are, I think, the biggest employer in Sweden with 57,000 employees. I think also worth mentioning is that life science and R&D is important. So I think when I come to that later, but I think collaborating with these kind of actors is also important when it comes to AI and driving AI innovation in healthcare. As I mentioned, so Sahlgrenska University Hospital is the sort of university hospital in the region Västra Götaland. We're a big hospital, 70,000 employees. I think one of the larger ones in Europe. We're the innovation hub of Region Västra Götaland, I think the official name is. As a university hospital, of course, it's important that we sort of drive innovation and clinical research, etc., and have that sort of role in the region. We have emergency, we have specialized care, we do have national specialized care, a lot of assignments, and importantly also research, innovation, and technology is very important. So we do have centers of excellence for both the AI competence center, which I'm representing, but also precision medicine, digital health, advanced imaging, 3D printing, etc. So we do have these kind of centers for these sort of forward-looking areas, technologies, innovation areas, etc. So winding back a couple of years ago, we sort of realized, I think 5-6 years ago, that AI would be something that would be important for healthcare. So, and part of taking that initiative and working with AI was forming the AI Competence Center, which I'm heading since we was inaugurated 2020. So we have sort of the mission of to facilitate and support AI, all the AI initiatives across the hospital, which is very, very broad when I look back and see our sort of the mission that we got then and compare it with how it looks like today. So back then it was like we should look at AI in the clinical R&D space. We should also make sure that we sort of implement AI into clinical practice. Very much early on was sort of focus on the infrastructure. So how do we get this proper IT infrastructure or our IT infrastructure properly developed to facilitate or support AI initiatives? How do we have processes in place to access large amounts of data from our different data sources, for instance, but also other processes when it comes to data and AI, and getting the right competence in place. So back in 2020, we had just a few, I would say, AI developers or data scientists that you might call them. I think now we have, throughout the region, I think we have at least 50 that has used our sort of AI infrastructures. We have 50 data scientists that have been operationally active. So we have sort of expanded that sort of competence quite a bit. And back in 2020, we looked at 4 focus areas, which was the sort of medical problems and apply AI there. Much of this was sort of clinical research and applying AI into clinical research, but also these kind of operational and administrative areas or projects where we sort of wanted to develop tools for clinicians, for instance, for planning purposes, for administrative purposes, etc. Another area that we saw what's very important, I think is increasingly important, is the sort of testing and validation of commercial tools or commercial available AI solutions. Back in 2020, there weren't that many, but I think moving on to now, I think we have 1,000 plus certified AI solutions. We need to have the proper testing and validation facilities and processes for that, etc. And then as a competence center, of course, we need to be on top of the sort of relevant AI methods that's relevant for healthcare. So this was how it looked like 5 years ago when we set out, and we have been working more or less according to this sort of overview. However, now it looks a little bit different. So this sort of AI support infrastructure looks different. So we have still the AI Competence Center focusing very much on the sort of novel methods, applications, novel concepts, clinical research, support to clinical research projects, etc. However, we realized that to be able to deploy this type of tools, we need other types of skills, other skill sets, not just data scientists and AI developers. We need software developers, full stack developers, etc., etc. So a year ago, we formed the AI deployment unit, which is on a regional scale, focusing very much on the deployment of the solutions that developed from the AI Competence Center, the prototypes and proof of concept. And then also lifecycle management, having like a proper AI architecture for lifecycle management of these tools, etc. We do have an AI platform, so we made a strategic decision 5 years ago to invest in an on-premise platform with the computing power with GPUs. I think we did quite a good choice because that made us get started quite early. I think if we have waited for going to the cloud, I think we still to some extent would have been waiting. However, there are some openings for going into the cloud, and we are sort of exploring that. But I think our IT architects or AI architects are saying it might be like a hybrid version or something moving forward, but we'll see. Our main focus is on the on-premise compute platform within our data centers. Data is, of course, important. I think you heard Mohammed saying that, and I think no AI without data, basically. So having access to proper data is very important, of course, and having that like the patient-centric view of data, I think is the most relevant way. So we have like a clinical data warehouse with patient-centric data from journals, lab results, administrative systems. We also have like a big medical imaging data lake, but then we have so many other data sources, and we still it's sort of an ongoing work consolidating our data landscape. And I think this is extremely important. It's something that we need to continue working with. But we do have like a big opportunity there when it comes to being a healthcare provider with a lot of patient data, etc., etc. So we need to continue that work. And then, of course, having this kind of testing validation kind of platform, and you can call it sandbox, test bed, whatever, but to be able to test it and validate these commercial, but also perhaps in-house developed solutions, and make sure that they actually work in your settings with your patient population, with your ways of working, with your equipment, etc. So we do try to work with across all our different types of projects, being it like a clinical project, research project, administrative project. We try to use the same sort of support infrastructure and technical stack as much as possible to facilitate and make the transition from early stage projects to the late stage and develop production deployed solutions as smooth as possible. So this is a sort of centralized support structure, and I think moving forward, I think we would like to see like what's called decentralized AI innovation, where we have AI developers or AI innovators embedded within our clinical departments throughout the organization. I think to some extent we're already there. I think when it comes to clinical research, I think we do have a number of clinical research projects or groups that have their own sort of AI developers, AI competence, and they use the sort of centralized support function, perhaps just to get access of the AI platform or get data, but then they can handle by themselves. And I think moving forward, I think this is the way we would like to have it developed. I think you can call this like a hub and spoke model as well. And the sort of centralized structure here is very much focused on the technical ones. I think moving forward, I think we need to focus much more on the governance part of AI. And part of that is, of course, how do we prioritize the projects? So we have started working with this kind of process. This is based on an ISO standard for innovation, unfortunately in Swedish, but it goes from the ID phase to the implementation phase with different phases, 5 different phases, and with different decision points. And this is not just for AI, this is for digitalization in general in our region. I think it's good. We try to become more and more structured. How do we sort of prioritize our projects, because the increased interest in AI makes it impossible for us to handle all the different requests and ideas, and we need to have a way to prioritize this. So I think looking into the feasibility, of course, the technical feasibility and the legal feasibility of a project idea is, of course, very important. Also, to sort of the strategic priorities. Does this project idea actually align with this overreaching strategic ideas that we have as an organization, but also perhaps on a more digital or AI dimension? And finally, I think also looking into the sort of return of investment. How do we assess the possible return of investment as early as possible in the phase 1, for instance? But also, how do we set up like the pilots in phase 3 to make them as good as possible, so we can have the informed decision of moving forward into phase 4 and phase 5? And then, of course, follow up in phase 5, for instance. How do we actually get return of investment of these projects? And I think also alluding a little bit to what Mohammed said about the innovation process, I think you need to make sure that you actually have this model where you have a funnel, where you have a lot of ideas, and then a lot of these will be failures, and in the end you might start with 10 and just one will make it to the implementation phase. And I think this is very important to have this model, to view this model and have a model in place for this, and to understand that the 9 that were failures were not really failures. You learned a lot of these, and that's part of the model. I think external collaborations is, of course, very important. We cannot do this by ourselves. We need to collaborate. So, of course, on a local scale, we are working together with our sort of academia, but also industry, life science industry and pharmaceutical industry, for instance. On a national scale, I mean, what we are doing together with Region Skåne and Karolinska now is very important. Also working with authorities, organizations like AI Sweden, I think brings a lot of value to us as an organization. But also on the international scale, I think we need to learn from the best, and working together with Canada and Unity Health in Toronto is really important, but also other parts of the world, of course. So there are a number of challenges. I mean, I've talked about the technical challenges already, like the proper IT infrastructure, data access. There are legal challenges that we need to take into account. How do we actually handle the current legislation, which is quite challenging? AI sort of challenges the current legislation quite a bit, but we have a lot of coming legislation as well that we need to take into account that are very much AI focused. There are ethical issues that we need to take into account. I think this is increasingly important, that perhaps even though we have a lot of AI solutions that we could use, we need to make a lot of sort of ethical decision of that perhaps we shouldn't actually use this, even though we could get a great short-term benefit from them, for instance. I think as an organization, I used to present like this. We are just getting started. I think right now we are more or less, we need to get up to speed. We need to sort of increase momentum, get the acceleration going. I think the main problem now, I think, is sort of scale. How do we do this in scale? How do we get the quantity of projects up, etc., etc.? And I think getting the engagement from our clinical staff or the leadership is very important. So make sure that they sort of feel that they own the AI question. It's not an IT question. It's not a digitalization question. It's not a central question. It's something that's relevant for the clinical staff as well, and make them engaged. And I think just to sort of finish up now with a sort of reflection and just wrapping up, I usually start with, when I present AI, I usually start with a definition of AI, because I've noticed that people see different things. When you say AI, they sort of envision different things. And there is actually no kind of clear definition of AI across the world, but they are looking in the same direction. And here is one that I used from the AI Act from the European Union, which says that it's a machine-based system. There are some inputs, and you generate an output. So there are inputs in terms of data, information, etc. And what you generate is an output. Could be predictions, could be decisions, etc. And when you think about sort of the traditional way of looking into care and technology, and you have this sort of IT view of things, well, you develop systems that support the way we are working. They are different. They are something completely different, but they are supporting the way that we are working. They are separate. I think we're moving into digitalization. I mean, we're going to what's called digital health. We are changing ways of working depending on digital solutions. There are digital care, digital health. But I think moving into AI, I think these are overlapping much, much more. And if you think about what's actually being done as a healthcare worker and as a doctor, for instance, you take data information about the patient, the journal, what you see, the medical images, etc., etc. You combine that with the information, the sort of medical guidelines with the scientific literature, for instance, all this kind of information. You try to put it together and to form some kind of output, some kind of decision. And that is, if you think about it, that is exactly the sort of definition of AI that I showed in the beginning. So I think going back and say that AI should be one of the core strategic pillars that Mohammed described, and I think this is something that should be something for every organization to take into account. So by that, thank you very much, and looking forward for the discussion.